Welcome back. All right. So last night, of course, we had the 4 hour plus live stream with the amazing pay per view, which I've already seen rave reviews from elsewhere. I was going to do a video on it last night talking about it, and I thought, no, it's been a 4 hour live stream. It's late at night. I'll sleep on it, and I'll talk about it today. And here we are. And I'm wearing my Santa Claus jersey from Geeky Jerseys because it was Christmas for hockey for hockey. I'm used to doing the hockey videos for wrestling fans last night. This could not have been booked better. This is what good wrestling looks like. This is how it works. And is there a lot of fan service in this card? Yeah, there was a lot of fan service. That's how it should work. It's weird because you hear a lot of that in wrestling, like, well, they're just trying to make the fans happy. This is all fan service. We don't watch movies and TV shows and go, I enjoyed that too much. They really played everything that I like. I'm really offended by that. That doesn't happen. So it's weird that in wrestling, when fans get what they want, that people say, well, they shouldn't do that for the fans. Why not? That's how you have a successful company, is by making your fans happy and having them want to watch and consume your product, right? So I'm going to go through the matches that we saw last night and through all this. I have watched the ups and downs on Wall Culture Wrestling, and Simon Miller was just as excited as I was during the live stream last night, clearly. Maybe more so, right? So they started off with Miro versus Kingston. I like this idea, that the Eddie Kingston versus Miro matches first. Being and the terminology has sometimes been curtain jerker. That you're the guy that opens the curtain. You're the guy who's out there first. And it's an insult, right? That you're at the bottom of the card. But if you're running a card well, the first match of the night should be one to bring people in. It should be one that people really enjoy. Ideally, it should be good. And the best example of that, I would go all the way back to WrestleMania 17, which I may reference again in this video, and you had Chris Jericho against William Regal for the Intercontinental title. And it set the tone for the night. It was the start of the best pay-per-view I've ever watched. But this is close. This is close. I haven't spent money to watch a pay-per-view in a long time. This one makes me think I should do it again. That I absolutely should. And through Fight TV, you can replay it whenever you want. You've bought it, it's yours. It's possible through Fight TV I buy other pay-per-views and I can watch them at a later time, because very often once hockey season gets started, at the time the pay-per-views are on, I'm busy doing the hockey thing, right? Well, if I can watch the pay-per-view anytime, I can record it and watch it later and just try to avoid spoilers in the meantime, which is difficult. Avoiding spoilers is difficult. But this Miro versus Kingston match sets the tone. Miro keeps the title. Kingston gave him quite the run for his money, and it just makes Miro even more of a monster. He stays unbeaten, and you could build this up for a rematch, absolutely. Then we go to Moxley versus Kojima. Very good match. Moxley wins. And after that, Minoru Suzuki comes out and beats him up. And so we're going to have them face each other this week on Dynamite. Perfect. Moxley has continued to be kept busy by New Japan wrestlers. And I think this is perfect. Moxley was champ, right? He was the top of the card. He was the guy. And since losing the belt, they've kept him busy without him actually targeting Omega for the rematch. So one thing in wrestling that's really predictable is that the champion loses, and then you have a rematch and another rematch, and then they might change the belt back again. AEW doesn't do that, which I think is nice, because then you get fresh new matches more often than not. So Moxley being busy, and this building up to, obviously he's going to fight Tanahashi soon, works out really well. It means that you bring Japanese wrestlers over for eyeballs on this side of the pond in North America to see them, who may not have seen them before. And Moxley is willing to make them look good. There wasn't really a match on this card, minus one, where it looked like a squash, and that's because that one was booked that way. But it was not Moxley versus Kojima. That was a good match. Then you get Britt Baker against Chris Statlander, and Baker keeps the belt. It was interesting to me that Britt Baker won this, and she did it as a heel, but she didn't need like a bunch of interference from Rebel and from Jamie Hayter, and there wasn't like a bunch of shenanigans at ringside and a bunch of the distraction stuff. It was just a good, straightforward match. Baker wins it. I do think we're building up to Rebel being tossed to the curb by Britt Baker at some point, and just going with Jamie Hayter as being her manager, tough, protection, whatnot. But yeah, Baker I thought did really, really well, and the crowd still loves her. Why not? She had to be pretty happy tonight. She knew what was coming, and she teased that, of course, last week, and she did well. So Baker keeps the belt. Statlander still looks good. Eventually, Statlander probably gets another shot at the belt. But yeah, we'll see what happens. And then they had they had Andrade. They talked about him versus Pac. That's happening on Rampage. So on Andrade, it's a shame he's not on the card. Imagine if you add Andrade versus Pac to this card. This card was so good, and then you put Andrade versus Pac on it. Man, that would have been insane. However, this card works out really, really well. So then they go to the Young Bucks versus Lucha Bros for the tag belts. And holy Lord. And here's where if you watch the live stream, the difference between my wife watching a wrestling event and myself. I understand the thumbtacks thing. I thought it was a creative way to use it, that you have the thumbtacks glued to the bottom of a boot, or a shoe in this case, right? A high top runner. My only thought was, so if they're sticking out, won't your foot stick into the canvas? Wouldn't that happen? So, there's that. But anyways, I really thought the Bucks were going to retain. As soon as that shoe was on his foot, I thought, all right. So the Young Bucks are going to use this loaded shoe, however you want to look at it, and they're going to win. And then they didn't. Lucha Bros win the belts. And then what I liked about this as well, there wasn't a bunch of shenanigans after. We didn't see like all of the members of the Elite coming out to beat them up or anything. They won the belts. And the Bucks put them over. It was an absolutely sensational match. There will be a rematch at some point. But I was surprised because I really thought they were building it up so Jurassic Express would win the tag belts. And so maybe Jurassic Express ends up in a program with the Lucha Bros. I'm okay with that. I am perfectly fine with that. But the Young Bucks, with their attitude and just everything, they're going to end up being back in the mix for the titles probably as soon as this coming Wednesday, right? Then they had the Casino Royale match, which saw the debut of the former Ruby Riott, now Ruby Soho. The one thing that I noticed about former WWE stars when they come out on stage in an AEW event, they look so happy. Ruby appeared to be tearing up as she came down the rampway towards the ring. They just seem to be so happy to be there. And it's hard not to find yourself saying, wow, I'm really, really happy they're there, even if it's not necessarily a wrestler you cheer for. Ruby, I thought, was a good mid-carder in WWE who probably deserved more of an opportunity than she got. And I thought the Riot Squad was a really fun group that, again, didn't really get, I thought, the opportunities they deserved. Never had a run with the tag belts. She wins the Casino Royale match. That I thought was a bit of a surprise. I really thought Thunder Rosa was going to win that, and that Thunder Rosa would have that program with Britt Baker. But that's on the back burner now, and Ruby is the next one to get a title shot at Britt Baker, which should be a great match. Ruby's a very good wrestler, and again, with WWE, with the women, it sometimes feels like, okay, so this person doesn't quite have the look that Vince McMahon might like, so maybe Ruby didn't have the look. I've got that feeling with Shayna Baszler, that Baszler, who was a monster in NXT and a great champion, she's kind of been, I don't know, it's not working on the main roster, and now she's losing matches right, left, and center, and it feels like whatever momentum and whatever intimidation factor she had in NXT, she doesn't have that on the main roster. But you put Shayna Baszler in this company, I think she'd fit in, and I think she'd do really, really well. There are also wrestlers who don't necessarily end up at the top of the card here, that if they run out of their AEW contracts, could do well in WWE. There are wrestlers who I think could benefit from moving either way. And then after that match, which was pretty well done, I did have some surprises. Hikaru Shida didn't last very long. Anna Jay being dumped out was kind of just a thing that happened. There were some women in that match that the fans were really into that just got dumped out. When you have a battle royal, it's going to happen, but there were wrestlers that I think fans wanted to see at least make it to the final four that didn't. But there were definitely some potential feuds that came out of that match. Then you get MJF versus Y2J. MJF is the ultimate heel. The argument that, well, Y2J should have put MJF over, he has repeatedly. And the way that this one finishes, MJF can come out on Wednesday and go, no, I pinned him for 3, and then this idiot ref comes out and restarts it. He could even call the ref out and punch the ref. This kind of thing, right? And really get into the anti-authority thing that would suit MJF completely to a T. So, Y2J, Jericho, does not retire. MJF, that feud is now done. I would think he moves on. I don't know who the next feud's going to be with, but it should be interesting. Maybe Sammy Guevara is the next one that he has a big fight with, and you could probably have some really good matches there between him and Sammy. And of course, after Jericho wins, the Inner Circle comes out and celebrates with him, and you can look at that and go, wow, that's a lot of wrestlers that aren't on the card that would probably have pretty good matches. Yeah, AEW stacked now. And then they had CM Punk versus Darby Allin. Because sure, you're not already looking at arguably one of the best pay-per-views ever. Let's have CM Punk versus Darby, which was great. It's interesting too, because when I watch pay-per-views, usually there's 2 or 3 matches that I'm really, really into, and then there's a bunch of others that And sometimes it can be this match doesn't really matter, it's just setting up rematches. But these matches all felt important last night. CM Punk wins, but he made Darby look really good. And at the end, they sort of teased that maybe something was Sting. But there's nothing untoward that happens. There's no shenanigans. Nobody turned heel in this match. Nobody needed to. And Punk comes out of this looking pretty good. I'll be interested to see who he fights next. Who's next on his list of wrestlers to fight. And maybe he targets MJF or MJF targets him. Maybe you have this great feud between CM Punk and MJF. And I would love that because they're both really good on the microphone. Those promos, dueling promos of the two of them against each other could be absolutely fantastic. And then you get to the break match. Paul White versus QT Marshall. Paul White wins. There wasn't any shenanigans after his group's in there and Paul White's throwing him around. And I'm like, why isn't the referee disqualifying anybody? It's fine. And so the former Big Show, now Paul White, he wins. So, pretty quick match. So there's that mercy in there that is a pretty quick match. And then they did a promo saying that Malachi Black will face Dustin Rhodes, the former Goldust, who was before that Dustin Rhodes. I believe that one's on Dynamite this week. So that could be an excellent match. And again, you've got Andrade, Pac, Malachi Black, Dustin Rhodes. None of them are even on this card. You've got the Inner Circle. No Jake Hager. I almost said Jack Swagger. Santana Ortiz. Like, you've got a lot. And of course, the guys from the Pinnacle, too. There are so many wrestlers who weren't even on this card that could have just made it another 3 hours long. Make it a 7-hour card, sure. So they announced that, and then we go to the main event, right? Omega versus Cage. Christian Cage does what he does. He has great matches. And looks like he's dead. He multiple times in this match looked like, well, that might be it. His career might be over. And then he gets back up. Kenny Omega is a very good world champion. He really is. He is a world champion that's had that belt for a long time now. He keeps the belt. Then the Elite comes out. My favorite was it Nick Jackson? Might have been Matt Jackson that had the ice pack on the back of his neck. And it was this huge, just ridiculous ice pack on his neck and his upper back. And it looked ridiculous, which I thought was great. Because, of course, they went through hell against the Lucha Bros. So, of course, everybody starts beating up Christian Cage because it's what you do, right? And then out comes Jurassic Express. And then, that turns into a mess. And you've got Kenny Omega basically saying, who can beat me? Adam Cole. And if you watched the live stream, you saw my reaction to Adam Cole, because that was fantastic. And Adam Cole, and I'm thinking, well, if he's a face, and I'm doing that because he's not really a face. I've watched him in ROH, I've watched him in NXT. He's better as a heel. He is always better as a heel. So of course he's a face for a very, very short period. He ends up joining the Elite, and I thought him being a member of the Elite makes total, complete sense. He fits right in. The only question I have then is, so is the Elite going to drop a member? Are we going to, because it just feels like that group's getting a little big. So is the Elite going to drop a member? We don't want to end up with an NWO style faction. There are a lot of factions in this company, but I don't think it hurts them at all. But yeah, Adam Cole, and of course I always do the Adam Cole baby, the same as all the fans do. And so it looked like maybe that'd be it. But Daniel Bryan, now Bryan Danielson again, which was his name on the indies before he went to WWE. Bryan Danielson is back, and he's anti-Elite. There was just a small part of me thinking, now if Daniel Bryan hits the ring and he joins the Elite too, that would be the wrong call. So thankfully they didn't do that. And so you've got this nice offset where Adam Cole's come in to join the Elite, Bryan Danielson's come in to not join the Elite and oppose the Elite, and you can tease Kenny Omega versus Bryan Danielson. Right? Sign me up. I'm 100% behind that. Let's do that. Why aren't we doing that match right now? So it was Christmas for wrestling fans last night, and it was, honestly, it was worth every penny I spent on that pay-per-view. It was absolutely great. And I know there are people who don't like AEW. I know there are people who will cut down anything AEW does. There's those that think you have to pick WWE or AEW. I think, why not both? I'm in that camp. I am perfectly fine watching either product. I just don't find WWE can hold my attention anymore. Raw's too long. There's too many rematches. There's too many matches that end in disqualifications, outside or countouts. They just don't matter. The matches, it doesn't feel like they matter. You come out of pay-per-views and it doesn't feel like anything's settled, or it's just there's angles and storylines that feel like they're just abandoned, and it gets harder and harder to watch it from week to week. And so for me, this was a really, really good pay-per-view from top to bottom, and I expect that in November, when the next pay-per-view hits, which is Full Gear, we're going to see some fantastic matches again. And part of what I think helps AEW is that every week of Dynamite and Rampage feel important, and it doesn't feel like they're just building to the next pay-per-view. It feels like they're saying, all right, tune in next week for Dynamite because we've got this big match coming up. We've got this big storyline. And it feels like when I watch a WWE program, it's, don't forget, couple of weeks, we have Survivor Series. Hey, don't forget, couple of weeks, this is coming up. Hey, these guys are going to fight each other in a couple of weeks. So they're fighting tonight as a preview for when they're going to fight in a couple of weeks. And it's something that WWE's had going on for a long time. And I remember when they went from having 4 pay-per-views a year to became 8 and then 12. And of course, WCW was doing that, and WCW pushed in that direction. And it just feels like it's gotten to a ridiculous degree that nothing on the weekly shows necessarily matters because they're just building to the next pay-per-view. And that's it. There are a lot of really good wrestlers that weren't on this pay-per-view for AEW. And it doesn't feel like they're getting buried. And it doesn't feel like they're ignored. It feels like this is what's in the main event and in all the pictures for this pay-per-view. And the pictures going into Full Gear will look completely different. Some of the guys who had matches here won't have matches at Full Gear. And there'll be other wrestlers in their place. And that's okay. I really like what they've done. I really enjoyed this show. And it was kind of fun to do a live stream of the show. Again, once things start getting a little bloody and guys are getting hurt, especially when Darby Allin hit that corner post and flew out of the ring, that looked scary. But he was okay, at least looked okay, and I haven't heard any reports of him being hurt during that match. But this was quite the show. I know it's not for everybody's taste, but man, as a wrestling program, it was okay by me. But let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Which match do you think was the match of the night? For me, the match of the night would probably be CM Punk versus Darby. The Bucks versus the Bros was excellent as well, though. And I thought Miro and Kingston, again, to start the night, had a great match. Omega versus Cage, the match, sadly, while it was a really good match, it's overshadowed by everything that happened after. Like it's just, here's Adam Cole. Oh, and here's Bryan Danielson. Ta-da! And that's after they had debuted Ruby Soho in the same show. So it's just, appearance by appearance by appearance. And this is a stacked roster. Absolutely stacked roster. So let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through and you just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.